In this video, we'll talk about hyperglycemia and hypoglycemia, some of the signs, some of the symptoms, some of the causes, and especially for hypoglycemia, how to treat it if it happens. So if we start with hyperglycemia, hyperglycemia is defined as having blood sugar that's over 11. So if you're testing and your blood sugars are above 11, it would be considered hyperglycemia, which in the long term, it can kind of do a lot of damage. If your blood sugars are constantly in the hyperglycemia zone, it can kind of make you more likely to get any kind of complications with diabetes, which we'll touch about in a video in the future. But anything over 11 would be considered hyperglycememia. And sometimes blood sugars might spike depending on, let's say, foods, depending on if your eating patterns are a little bit different. An illness can cause your blood sugars to spike. But if it's constantly up in that hyperglycemia zone, it would be a good idea to kind of go see your healthcare provider just to see how you can kind of bring it down and hopefully bring it back in target. If you're looking at hypoglycemia, it would be anything that's under 4. So if you're testing your blood sugars at 3.5, it would be considered hypoglycemia, which it can be caused by a lot of different things. So medication, or if you're on insulin, might cause hypoglycemia depending on if you take too much insulin. Your appetite, if you have a little bit less appetite in the moment and you're still taking kind of the same amount of insulin, it might cause your blood sugars to go down. And if there's an illness or anything like that, so if you're not feeling good, your blood sugars can start to go down, or like I said, it might go up with hyperglycemia. Both of the signs and symptoms are really similar, so it's a good idea if you're not feeling good to just make sure that you're checking your blood sugars if you have a meter at home and just seeing where they are. So if they fall in the hypoglycemia, so under 4, there is different ways to treat it, which we will talk about. And if you have a page in your little documents or booklet, and there's all the different treatments on there. So for hypoglycemia, like I said, different signs, and some of those signs are similar. It might happen too if somebody is over 11, so in the hyperglycemia zone. But if you're testing your blood sugars and they are under 4, which would be considered a hypoglycemia, some of the symptoms that you might feel, so things like sweating, trembling, some people will feel extremely hungry or might have a headache. Some people, let's say it's the middle of the night, they might wake up sweating or shaking, having a weird dream, things like that. Some people, it's a little bit more severe, but some people will experience like vision change, so it might get blurry a little bit. If it's extremely on the more severe side, I guess, some people will have difficulty speaking, and if it gets too low, people might become unconscious. So it's good to just know the signs, and if ever, like I said earlier, if ever you feel a little off, so if for some reason you have a headache and you can't really put your finger on it, it would be a good idea just to check your blood sugars to make sure that it's not under 4, you're not in the hypoglycemia zone. If it does happen, it is treatable. So if you test your blood sugars, let's say they're 3.5, the first step after is to eat something with fast-acting sugar. So it could be anything from like a tablespoon of honey. That'd be fast-acting sugar. It could be just plain sugar if that's all you have at home. So a tablespoon of sugar, you can mix it with water if you want. At the pharmacy, you can buy glucose tablets, so that's easy to carry around with you. Most of them, they will say on the pack how much you need to take to get to bring your blood sugars up. Some people will just keep like a little juice box with them wherever they go, in their car, things like that. But it can be candies like Lifesavers or little rockets, like 2 rolls of rockets. So just treating it with something that's fast-acting sugar. You don't want anything that has like fat in it or things like that. So people often ask about a chocolate bar, which does contain sugar, but there's also different things like fat in a chocolate bar. So it will raise your blood sugars, but it might take a little bit more time to kind of bring them up. So you want something that's just sugar, and then you wait 10 to 15 minutes and you recheck your blood sugars. If they're still below 4, then you go back and you repeat the steps or the step that I just described. So just taking something that's fast sugar and then waiting again 10 to 15 minutes to recheck. If you check and they're good again, so they're between 4 and 7, and if your next meal is longer than 1 hour away, it's a good idea to grab a snack when your blood sugars are back in target. And that's just to make sure that they don't go back down. So a snack could be like crackers and cheese, or a toast and peanut butter. So just something that has a starch, a little bit of carbohydrates in them, and then you want a source of protein. So in this case, like cheese would have a little bit of protein, or peanut butter. And that's just to make sure your blood sugars do stay in target and they don't drop down again. If, let's say it's right before supper and your next meal is in 10 to 15 minutes, you can wait just for your next meal. You don't have to eat that snack. It's going to do the exact same thing. But that's kind of how to treat hypoglycemia. If it happens often, you can't really put your finger on why it's happening. It might be a good idea to get in touch with your healthcare provider just to make sure if there's any medications that need to be changed, or if there's anything you can do to hopefully get less episodes of hypoglycemia.